So next up, podcast listeners, Nancy Pelosi says she can't discuss numbers and dollars of the new $3.5 trillion spending bill. She says, let's not talk about numbers and dollars. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat California, said during an interview on Sunday that people should not be focused on the $3.5 trillion price tag of a social spending bill the Democrats are trying to ram through Congress. Pelosi made the remarks during an interview on This Week with George Stephanopoulis. The $3.5 trillion price tag associated with the bill has been called into question in the past, with the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget estimating that the bill's true cost would be over $5 trillion. Yesterday, the Budget Committee passed out the Build Back Better legislation at the full $3.5 trillion. Can you believe that? That was the number that was sent to us by the Senate and by the President, Pelosi said. Obviously, with negotiations, there will have to be some changes in that, the sooner the better, so we can build our consensus to go forward. When pressed about some moderate Democrats not supporting the bill, because of the cost, Pelosi claimed that it will be paid for as she tried to dismiss fears of inflation. Quote, "It will be paid for," said Nancy. And that's the beauty of it. By having those in our economy and society who have not paid their fair share, paying their fair share, Pelosi said. So again, the Senate and the House, those who are not in full agreement with the president, right. Let's see what our values. Let's not talk about numbers and dollars. Let's talk about values. Let's not talk about dollars. Let's not talk about affordability. Let's talk about values. Similarly, Democrat Congresswoman from Washington State, Pramila Jayapal, chairman of the Progressive Caucus, claimed during an interview on CBS News Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan on Sunday that Democrats' $3.5 trillion social spending bill is a $0 bill. It doesn't cost anything. It's free money. Again, this is Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, Democrat of Washington State. Listen to this clip, podcast listeners. Here it is.
Because if you want childcare, if you want paid leave, if you want to take on climate change, if you want to repair housing in this country, if you want to make sure people have health care, there's going to be a price tag that goes with it.
So it will be less than $3.5 trillion, as the speaker suggested?
Well, let's talk about what people want, and then let's come to the number from that. It's not just a random number. So if somebody wants less than $3.5 trillion, tell us what you want to cut. Do you want to cut the childcare? Do you want to cut paid leave? What is it you want to cut? And then let's figure it out from there. But President Biden also said something very important the other day, which is this is a $0 bill because it's going to be completely paid for with taxes on the wealthiest and the largest.
It's a $0 bill, she said, because, President Biden said it's a $0 bill because it's paid for, because the wealthy are paying for this $0 bill that somehow costs $3.5 trillion, and some say could ultimately cost as much as $5 trillion over a period of years. So this is what it takes now to be a progressive in the House of Representatives. First, you have Nancy Pelosi, who's saying, well, the dollars don't matter. What matters are the values. And then you have Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who's saying, well, it really doesn't cost anything. You don't need to look at that because when something's already paid for, it really didn't cost anything. And that is how congressmen and women in the Progressive Caucus, which, look, I think pretty much constitutes the majority of Democrats now in the United States Congress. Because podcast listeners, we keep hearing this, right? Keep hearing the Republicans saying, we're going to knock off the moderate Democrats. The moderate Democrats who are elected are only moderate long enough until such time as they can move as far left as they can possibly move, because then they can get away with the voting. I mean, they're only temporarily representing their constituents. They would much rather be voting with this particular congresswoman as well as with AOC. And even Pelosi, who everybody says, well, at least we have Pelosi. We don't ever have AOC in charge. I mean, Pelosi thinks all of this spending is going to solve all of the world's problems. All of the world's problems, including, by the way, one of her favorite, which is childcare. You see how they play this game? The taxpayers should pay for childcare. The taxpayers should pay for cradle to grave welfare, cradle to grave for everybody, including people who were here illegally. And that really, believe it or not, kind of brings us to the dumbest bill in America, which I'll announce in a minute. But you're not going to believe this because there are words you can't say in America.